Hello, and thank you for taking the time to watch our UAE Social Studies Vision and Expectations for 2018 video. Firstly, I wanted to explain why we'd chosen to share this as a video. There are two reasons. Number one is that we realise how extremely busy everybody is at the moment. And rather than take up a whole team meeting to do the training, we thought it would be more helpful to you if you could choose when and where you access this information. The second reason is we're not actually just wanting to share the vision and expectations. We also want to get your feedback and your views. So throughout the presentation, questions will pop up on the screen, and if you could give your honest answers and feedback, that would be really helpful to us in shaping the curriculum moving forward. So, lastly, this information is really important. Therefore, if you could try your very best to make it to the end of the presentation, as those people who haven't managed to watch the presentation or haven't managed to watch the presentation to the end will have to attend some face-to-face training. I wanted to start by talking about our compliance. That's our legal obligations for teaching UAE Social Studies. The first thing to mention is that it is a core subject, which means it carries the same weight here in the UAE as English, maths and science. We're also obliged to teach 1 hour a week from years 2 to 6. And it has to be formally assessed. So these are the legal requirements for teaching UAE Social Studies here in the UAE. So, why is UAE Social Studies so important? I want to first start by sharing the purpose of UAE Social Studies as described by KHDA. That is to provide students with in-depth knowledge, skills and understanding in history, geography and civics, which emphasize the links and relationships between diverse groups, people, science and society. Students will contribute as responsible citizens and residents of the UAE to the building of a cohesive society that is inclusive of all, while preserving the UAE culture, heritage, and traditions. Now, it's interesting when you hear the purpose, it's a very noble purpose, and it's interesting that it's not all about the UAE. It's actually about the many diverse people that come together to make the UAE a success. And why is it important? Because so many of the children that attend our school are third culture children, meaning they live here, but they were born somewhere else. And though that brings with it many advantages, it does bring disadvantages too. These children struggle to create a sense of belonging. These children struggle to form a sense of identity, and they struggle to connect with the country that they live in. So it's so important that these children are exposed to the rich UAE culture, heritage and traditions in order that they can develop a deep and profound connection to where they live. Not just about the tallest buildings and the biggest theme parks, but the rich culture, heritage and traditions of the UAE. But also that we honour their culture too and their heritage, where they're actually from. That we emphasise the links and relationships between the diverse groups and people that make up our school. So that's why it's important for our children. So, what will the planning and teaching and learning of UAE Social Studies at WSO look like? In order to form this vision, we look to the last two strands of the UAE Social Studies curriculum, which are evaluation of sources and use of evidence and communication and presentation of results. And so we're getting a clear message from the curriculum that they want us to develop the children's inquiry skills and they want us to develop the children's creativity and communication skills too. They want us to teach the children how to access information and to utilize it in an authentic way. Therefore, we developed the following criteria for all UAE Social Studies lessons at WSO. They should all be inquiry-based. They should all be collaborative with children working together and adults facilitating. They should all be innovative with enterprising learning, and they should all be culturally representative, remembering the purpose that we're making links between diverse groups and people, and that they have creative outcomes to the learning. So children getting the chance to work their way through Bloom's taxonomy from the very bottom of recalling all the way to that creating at the top, that higher order thinking in order to represent their learning. So a big question is, what does that learning look like in the books? And I think our main piece of advice is to think of these books not as scrapbooks, but as portfolios. So they're not there to capture what the children did in the lesson. They're there to capture the learning and the progress. So capturing initial thoughts and final understandings, essentially, it's really important that they're not just a record of what the children did, but they record what the children learnt and the progress they made throughout the lesson. And though we ask the children to work collaboratively through social studies, it's important that each child's learning is represented in some way. And we want creative outcomes. So it's great to see QR codes for videos or pictures or presentations or websites that they created in order to show what they know, or artworks with captions and quotes and leaflets. If we are going for art, captions are very helpful to help explain their process and their thoughts. And finally, because it is a core subject, books should be marked using the school marking policy. So green highlighter to indicate when the learning objective has been met, and pink next steps for the group in order to extend and challenge them further. Okay, so I imagine a huge question that most people will be asking at this stage is, how on earth are we going to assess UAE Social Studies? We know from the compliance section that we are required to formally assess it, but how? Well, UAE Social Studies is made up of the 6 strands: history, geography, national education, economics, evaluation of sources and use of evidence, and finally communication and presentation of results. Now, each of those 6 strands has 6 to 9 objectives. That's about 40 objectives across each year to assess each child on. However, we have worked very hard to condense, reduce, and simplify those objectives down. So, what will you need to assess the children on each year? You will need to assess the children on 6 learning goals that we've created. 1 learning goal for each of the 6 strands. And I'll demonstrate how this works using the Year 6 strand of national education. Each year group will be given a document which has all of the 6 strands on, laid out like this. If we look along the bottom, we can see we have the original objectives in columns. Okay, now there were, for this strand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 original objectives that made up national education for year 6. And what we've done is we've summed them all up into one learning goal. And the learning goals are generally made up of 3 statements, 3 sentences. And if we look along the bottom here again at the original objectives, we can see that these 3 objectives, original objectives, have been grouped, okay, and they're in white. That means that these are the 3 objectives that we use to create this one statement, the first statement in the learning goal. That's for your information, so you know the 3 objectives that fed into that one statement of the learning goal. The next 4 that are grouped are pale blue, and because they're the second group, it means they relate to the second statement in the learning goal. And finally, self-explanatory, I guess, it's these 2 darker blue that come third. They relate to the third statement in the learning goal. That's for your information, so that when you're planning and teaching, you know exactly the origins of each of those statements that KHDA have provided. But remember, what you need to assess each child on is 6 learning goals, 1 learning goal for each strand. So how do we decide whether a child is emerging, expected, or exceeding? I want to look here to the Bloom's taxonomy and use his labels as a way of assessing the children. So if a child is able to remember or recall information from a lesson, they're emerging. If they're able to understand it and describe, they're emerging plus. When they're able to apply and analyze, that's when they move into expected. When they can evaluate their learning, that's exceeding. And when they can create something authentic with it, that then moves them into excelling. Okay, so all that's left is a quick summary of what we've covered in the presentation. We first explored the importance of UAE social studies, and I can't stress enough, this is a core subject. So that means in this country, it carries the same weight as English, maths, and science. But more importantly than that, it really does address the specific needs of our children, the needs of our third culture children and our Emirati children. We then looked at what lessons should look like. They should be inquiry-based, they should be collaborative, and they should be culturally representative. It shouldn't be solely about the UAE. It should be comparing the culture and heritage and traditions of the UAE with their own in order to create those links with diverse groups and people. And it should also have creative outcomes. We then looked at what our books should look like. And the important thing there is that the books and portfolios, rather, should be a record of learning and progress. And because this is a core subject, they should also be marked using the school's marking policy. And finally, we looked at assessment of UAE social studies using Classroom Monitor. And there we're looking at assessing every child against 6 learning goals across the whole year and grading them using Bloom's taxonomy. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that you found this useful and helpful, and hopefully it's got you excited about teaching and planning UAE social studies and making a big difference to the lives of the children in our school.